Hey, folks. Get the agenda. Give it just one more minute, and a couple actually topics that I don't think are added here, so I'll add them pretty quickly. I think Rohan will be giving an update on the conformance program, and Eric will be giving an update, a small update on feature flags.
Hey Tim, I guess you got it wrong. Today I want to talk about some of the things that how we do the discussion forum and all.
Yeah, so sorry. Yeah, because like I saw that PR and had other stuff, and I saw
Yeah.
performance, and okay, got it. Yeah, so that's I think it's like GitHub discussions, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, gotcha. Thank you for that correction.
Yeah.
And before we begin, could anyone volunteer to take notes?
I can take notes.
I appreciate it. Was that you, Rohan?
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, let's begin. I think first up, Rebecca will be talking about adaptive query execution in Sapphire. So there will be, I think, a small design review and some chance for discussion on that. So Rebecca, if you're there, would you like to begin?
Yeah, sure. I'm going to share my screen. I have some slides.
Go for it.
Okay, so can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
That's good because I can't see the Zoom anymore. So whatever. So today I'm going to talk about adaptive query execution in Spark. I call it adaptive query planning here because I think it's a little more specific to what kind of adaptiveness we're talking about. Yeah, so what is it? So with Presto, Spark, or Sapphire, we have anyway, or like the next stages need to wait for the previous stages to complete before they can begin execution. The stages are materialized. There's like a materialized shuffle in between. And so given that, the idea is basically that you can use the execution statistics from the completed stages to make smarter decisions in how you're going to execute the stages that follow. You have like more complete information that you didn't have when you initially planned the query. And so the idea is to use those execution statistics to inform how you're going to execute the following stages of the query. So this is basically an overview of the relevant part of the current architecture of how Presto works. So you have a plan, you convert it to a fragmented plan. So you break it down into the pieces that are going to be executed, like each stage, and their shuffled boundaries. So here, this plan here has 4 fragments. And then then that gets converted to RDDs that will be all submitted at once for execution with Spark. And so that's basically how things work today. this new architecture, which has a lot of arrows. So you start with the plan as before, but instead of creating the full fragmented plan all at once with all of the stages, we only break down the stages that are ready for execution. So the ones that aren't waiting for any dependencies to finish. So the ones that you start with are going to be all of the leaf stages, and you submit those for execution. And the rest of the plan, you don't break apart at all. So this here is going to be the bottom of the plan that used to connect to the stages is going to have the remote source nodes in it, but it's going to remain a plan. It's not going to be a plan in this like fragmented structure. So even though eventually this is going to become 2 fragments, right now these are still connected. So you submit the ones that are ready for execution, you convert them to RDDs and submit them for execution. And then we use those execution statistics to re-optimize the remaining plan that we had left over from the plan fragmenting. And so we can create and you might, for example, switch which is the build side of the join for a hash join. If you had put a larger table instead of a smaller table for the hash table, you can switch that. And then now we have this re-optimized plan, and we send that re-optimized plan back for fragmentation. What was that? And then, yeah, you submit that back to get the next plan fragment. So now once both of the dependencies had finished and we re-optimized the plan, you can get the next fragment that's ready to execute and repeat the process again until you have no remaining plan left. So here is another view of sort of that architecture change. So you create the query plan, you pass it to the plan fragmenter. Then there's a class called the Presto Spark Query Executor, and then it gets sent to the distributed runtime. And here we have create the query plan. We have this Presto Spark Adaptive Executor, which sort of handles all of the replanning. So the adaptive executor talks to the iterative plan fragmenter to get only the fragments that are ready and to get the remaining plan, and submits the ones that are ready for execution, and then sends the remaining plan to be re-optimized by some adaptive optimizers. And then that gets sent back to be fragmented again. And the adaptive optimizers are just regular plan optimizers they can include, existing plan optimizers, and they can also include new ones. The plan is going to be a little bit different from what a plan might include during regular query planning, because it will have these remote source nodes, which really don't exist during query planning. And so there are certain things that it might be in a more, I guess, physical plan state that some optimizers might not know how to handle. So we can't just like blindly apply the full plan optimization to this, plan that we're re-optimizing, but we can write some new optimizers, and we can probably take some of the existing optimizers as well. And so here are some planned and potential future optimizations. The first one, which is the one that we're starting with because it's simple, so it'll allow us to test the whole system, is just swapping the build and the probe sides for the hash join. Some other optimizations that we're thinking about are skew join. So basically mitigating skew. There's an optimization that Spark has if there's like one node that has a lot, like one join key that has a lot of skew on it, then you can break that apart from its partition. Other optimizations, some of these optimizations are actually based on that once we're they're not necessarily optimizations, but that once you're submitting the query in stages, there are other kinds of decisions that you might want to change in addition to how the plan itself. For example, you might want to handle certain stage failures, or you might want to have different like configurations for different stages about their like how many executors they use or what's their partition count, that kind of thing. Yeah, so these are some of the optimizations that we're thinking about. We're starting with join sides. One optimization is query stage reuse. Basically, it's a pretty easy case to be able to reuse stages of a query that are the same as each other. So for example, if you have like a self join or something, and then you don't need to scan the table twice because the leaf stages might match. Well, I don't know, the leaf stages might match each other. You can say, oh, I already created this stage. I don't need to run it again. So yeah, those are some of the optimizations we're thinking about. And that's all that I had. Does anyone have any questions?
Could increasing the allocated resources be something like further over partitioning?
Yeah, you can you can partition more, or you can excuse me, you can partition more, or you can try and run on
Larger
maybe
hardware.
like containers that have more memory. Either one.
For SKU join, would this essentially be kind of like a re-implementation on Presto side?
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, it's sort of to bring us more to parity with some of the features that Spark has.
Makes sense.
Rebecca, I have a quick question. When you say all the leaf stages submitting those leaf stages that's going to be submitted to Spark for execution, and then collect the runtime stats. So all those runtime stats will be collected and stored somewhere and then the scheduler will be smart to change the execution strategy. Is that the whole plan? I guess that's from previous slide.
So the runtime stats, they're not, yeah, so they get returned after you submit the stage for execution. That's sort of what gets returned at the end, is the stats of what happened during the execution. And yeah, then the optimizer uses it to feed into like cost-based optimization decisions. So instead of using during the initial planning time, the statistics that we use to make cost-based decisions are just from the like statistics that we have on the table, and then we just make estimates after that. And so as you get farther up the plan, they become less accurate. Or we're working now on using history-based statistics, which relies on the current, first of all, having seen the query before, and that the current the statistics for the data that you're looking at now is similar to what you looked at yesterday in order for that to be accurate. So we can have better information using the statistics from execution to feed that into cost-based optimization.
Right, that makes sense to me. I guess my question was like once the planner already decides the plan shape and it starts to execute by the local query executor, and then the stats going to return back to the coordinator, right? So how would the optimizer at that phase pick up the stats and reshape the plan? That, I guess that's my question. So are you going to add another planner like optimizer in between?
Yeah, we're going to have another optimization phase in
I
between.
see.
Yeah.
Understood. Okay. And I guess we're going to change the execution strategy from all in ones to like sort of phased, all a new strategy phase, right? Because we're going to have to execute all the leave stage first.
Yeah, we'll execute all of the leaf stage first, and then whenever which is sort of how it works already. I mean, we submit it all at once to Spark, but only the leaf stages get executed first because the next stages are waiting for them to finish before they can start. So this is more like, instead of having that managed entirely on the Spark scheduler side, taking back control so that we can re-optimize in between.
Right. And how would this work with dynamic filter enabled? Would there be any differences or changes in the dynamic filter?
I haven't really thought about that. I don't think it should make a difference because dynamic filtering is for broadcast joins where the filter is in the same, like the broadcast join is in the same stage as the scan that you're filtering.
Right.
And so I don't think one should affect the other.
Okay.
Any other questions?
One question I had is for the reusing plan fragment, reusing stage results. Like I imagine sometimes like like the intermediate results are put into more volatile storage that has lower TTLs, and I'm wondering like how that would be managed. Meaning, like I guess it would be configured to use more permanent storage. Were we to do that?
It would only be within a single query.
Oh, okay. Oh, gotcha. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yes. So it's only queries that are already doing sort of redundant computation inside themselves. Yeah, but what you're like between queries is sort of interesting. That's sort of similar to the like fragment caching that we have for like more interactive use cases.
Yeah. Cool. Any other questions? Great, thanks, Rebecca. Let's move on to Rohan, who will be talking about GitHub discussions.
Yeah, sure. Hey everyone, as Tim mentioned, I want to talk about GitHub discussion. So today we have multiple channels where user can come and ask questions about Presto. And one of that is the discussion forum on GitHub repo. But what is happening today is most of the questions and discussion topics are getting unanswered and unattended in that forum. So I would like to request you all to consider disabling that discussion feature, which is enabled in the GitHub for Presto project, and redirect all the Presto user questions and discussions to the Slack, because that's where everyone is most active, so that we won't have a situation where these multiple discussions or questions are getting unattended.
I think it makes sense to focus things to Slack and not have two different channels, to just focus it on one channel so that
Right.
we can do a better job of, knowing of questions that people have and looking at one place.
Right.
And probably also makes it less confusing for people who have the questions when there's only, kind of like one place to go when you do have a question.
Yes, absolutely.
So one input is that I feel compared to whatever kind of forum, like the Slack channel has a problem that if one question is asked once, and if I have the similar question, Slack is not easily searchable.
It's a great point. Like we don't really have kind of like something that we can link so that we can reuse the question.
Right, but also for the GitHub discussion, currently we don't have a process, or we don't have someone that's dedicated on like triaging those issues or redirecting them or pointing people to those questions so that they can get answered. So there's the problem there. So I fully support that if we want to move to Slack. I think it's a better approach because people are more live on there, like they can get to the questions. But in addition to that, I think we should think about how we can make it more searchable, or how we can get a way that's organized those questions so that if people have the similar question, they can find the answers, that they don't need to wait on the people to answer those questions repeatedly.
A solution for that is always to, when you see questions come up, to put them into a forum that is that's indexed by the search engines. I know that Presto doesn't have like a discourse or type of channel, but if we choose to use something within GitHub, or we choose to use something within Stack Overflow, it requires people to actually do it. Part of the reason why people like Slack is that it gets immediate gratification, but also having something that is searchable by by search engines, or indexable by search engines, is super important as well. Just need to have people willing to put that into that more searchable place.
It's also a good point that if we're getting a lot of the same questions, we might want to improve our documentation with those answers.
Yeah, that's also a good point.
But that somebody has to take ownership of that. If you don't take ownership of, nobody takes ownership of it, it's not going to happen.
I wonder, just as kind of like a matter of habit, when we answer Slack questions, maybe what we could do is we could ask to answer in GitHub discussions. And you do, it's not really kind of like solving the problem that we're discussing here, but it does solve the other problem of like not having something that's searchable, and something that's picked up by search engines, and something that you can kind of like refer back to when you get repeats of the same question.
I mean, that does work, but then you're going to lose the vibrancy of the Slack channel. And I know one of the goals of the Presto Foundation is to improve the vibrancy of the Presto community, and that happens in Slack. I'm not saying that I have an answer to this question. This was at my when I worked with Drew, it was the same problem. It's a give or take. Searchable by search engines doesn't create a community. Creating a community where you have people jumping in and helping people real time doesn't create searchable results. So it depends on which side of the coin people want to move the Presto community towards.
Yeah, I think Richard, you have a good point. I'm totally in that. So to me, I now you kind of convinced me that I think the community, it's a more live community is something that might be good for us. And I think the searchable thing can be a separate issue that but currently is the issue is that the GitHub discussions, I think there's lack of engagement and people are not getting the answers. I think that's is not good for the community, and they will just leave, and if they cannot find it, there's a Slack channel for it.
And we can, I think there are some tools now, and I'll have to go back and look. I haven't looked for a while. There are tools that will scrape Slack for you and create a knowledge base. Again, that's indexable, but I need to go look into that. But if that's an option.
Yes, I've seen that too. Like my previous experience, we even developed something for that. So I think the real issue we try to solve here is how do we get those questions in the GitHub discussions more answered more timely. And I think GitHub with the Slack is I think it's a good way to go. And then I think there's a separate issue that we can look into after this, is that how we can just create some docs or notes for the question being asked, so that we can easily point people to if we see some certain questions repeatedly.
So coming back though to the specific question of what to do with GitHub discussions, it sounds like we're all kind of in agreement that has this problem that we don't really support it very well, and by removing access to it, like we can solve the other problem of having something that's linkable and searchable at another time. But it sounds like we do want to disable access to GitHub discussions. Does anyone disagree with that?
If we agree to do that, then I would say we probably should put something in the README to say, if you have any questions, I don't know if we have that today, like in the README, say if you have questions, here's the Slack channel you can go to for help.
In contributing.md, we do link to the Slack channel.
But if I'm a user, then probably won't check contribute.md then.
What I have seen is when there is a discussion forum which is next to your repo, users go and check. I mean, the GitHub users go and check those discussion forum, and if they find they need some help, they ask a question there. If there is a no discussion forum, they look for the another thing, like they may ask the question in an issue section itself, or they look for the Slack channel. And we mention Slack everywhere, like on Presto TV website, and we can make more prominent on the GitHub repo as well if it is hidden.
Yeah, we can make it like part of the README, so that it's very noticeable. All right. Any concerns or any other?
I'm good, yeah. Tim, do you want to take this action to disable?
Yeah, and we can actually, I mean, Rebecca and I are here. I think we could, very quickly, I don't picture this being like a very controversial thing. I think we could just, maybe, quickly just do a vote, and quickly open the PR to redirect people to the Slack channel. So I would vote in favor of kind of like disabling GitHub discussions. Rebecca, how would you vote?
I agree. Yeah. Also.
Okay. Okay, great. So as a follow-up, then we'll just disable the discussion, and I have a PR out right now that redirects folks to the Slack channel. We'll get that reviewed today, merged today.
Cool, thank you. I also just want to take this opportunity and bring up one more issue, that we have multiple PRs open by these community users, and many of these are already reviewed by our contributors. But now these PRs are waiting for Presto committers to do like final review, sanity check, and merge. So I would like to request you all to please take a look at some of these PRs which are assigned to committers group, and help us to move this project forward faster. Also, what else we can do to make it more active? If anyone has any ideas, how can we improve this? I just wanted to open up for this the discussion. I know we don't have all committers on this call, but
I can speak for myself that it's helpful if someone thinks about like a specific committer that would, or like a couple that would be good for review for that, because it can be hard to look at all of the ones that are assigned to all committers, and so if they're, but I do look at the ones that are assigned to me.
I see.
So I heard a similar saying from Ying because she actually got a lot of emails whenever people tag committers, and she said sometimes she finds it hard to find out like what PRs are on the areas that she's familiar with and she feels comfortable reviewing. So that actually lead to like she's not like reviewing a lot of the PRs, and then we need to tag very specifically the PRs and say, hey, this Ying, you probably are familiar with this. Maybe you can take a look. I think maybe many other committers run into a similar issue as well.
We probably also have a bottleneck on committers, and you know, like we do have the code owners program, and you know, like what we can do is we can, you know, separate out more components into more code owners, because while we have few committers that kind of like maintain the whole code base, this vast code base, we do have a lot of people who have deep expertise in parts of it. So that could be like another path forward to solve like kind of like the bottleneck problem. I also think like if you have a list, it's helpful to go through the list. You know, sort of like what we could do is like we can highlight some of these during this meeting, and you know, typically you have kind of like a pretty good idea of, you know, who would be a good reviewer for which component. If you don't have a good, you know, idea about like who should, you know, kind of like provide that final review, we can bring it up here, or, you know, like you can sort of like reach out on Slack, you know, to kind of follow through.
Okay, Tim, we have a meeting tomorrow. Can I just take it offline and follow up with you? I know that Eric need to go through the feature toggle thing as well.
Sounds good.
Yeah, we do have a list of combination of community PRs and also HANA PRs as well.
Okay. Anything else?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
All right, Eric, feature toggles.
All right. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Hello? Okay. Okay. Let me share my screen. Can you guys see the doc?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Rebecca. Yeah, this is a kind of a new topic for feature toggle, but this one is also a follow-up from a previous meeting from HANA for the edge release and stable release. So I'll briefly cover those two. But the most important thing I want to discuss with the audience today is, are we really trunk-based development or continuous integration based? I think based on the observation we had in the last few months, we develop on trunk, and this becomes a misconception for a lot of users that we are CI based, continuous integration based, but we are actually not. And that's actually one of the major reasons that we have release issues. We have to apply patches and hotfixes to the release branch. And sometimes it causes confusion and accidental rollback of PRs from certain companies or contributors or open source for something they already deployed into their production. So that's the topic today. By definition, to be continuous migration or continuous delivery compliant, normally people use two kind of tooling to assist with that. The first one is the feature toggle, and the other one is comprehensive automated testing. This is a very mature model. It's not by any means a bleeding edge definition. This has been used for more than 10 years since Martin Fowler coined the term in 2010. So in our current setup, right, we don't have those. So breaking changes can easily and always block each other's release. And we are open source, so everybody can contribute. But unfortunately, it caused some situation. For example, say I create a PR, right? My code is not even used in your production environment, right? And but unfortunately, I may break your release and cause you to roll back. That's the major issue we're trying to solve here. As you know, in the future, we are also gonna have Prestissimo and Velox in the picture. So a feature that is touching several components may be more complex to control, and it may require more careful and coordinated changes and communication. Another benefit of feature toggle is canary release with different strategies, like time-based, for example, like allow list-based for different kind of users you have or clients you have. This is a recap of the definition of edge and stable release. We are gonna have edge release cut pretty soon. So you may see that in the open source repo. So just for a quick reminder, edge means there's no guarantee for regression or stableness on the edge branch, versus unstable release, the stable one and trunk will get continuous patches if any team found a patch and apply the patch on their own release. We're gonna also put the patch on the trunk and the stable releases. Okay. Any questions so far for either feature toggle or this two release kind of naming convention or definition? Okay, I'll keep going. So the version schema for Edge, as previously demoed, is gonna follow the semantic version with Edge at the end. So if, for example, the open source CI infra that Ahana is working on, if they cut release 2810 Edge 1 today, and tomorrow, say, another company want to cut another release, it's gonna be -Edge 2. For more details, there's a logic which is based on GitHub metadata as the source of truth to keep increasing this number. So this keeps, you know, each kind of user, each open source kind of company or user the flexibility to work on their own edge without kind of step on each other. That's the main usage for that. For the open source stable release, as I mentioned earlier, there will be more testing on that and more guarantee to have the patches and hot fix on that. On the open source CI infra side, Ahana I think Ethan is here. He can correct me. But the goal is to run more end-to-end tests to cover basic use cases with TPCH and TPCDS benchmark. All right, more details on the feature toggle. A quick time check. Team, are we good on that? Do I have to finish really quick on this?
You're the last one on the agenda, so you have
Okay,
like 15 minutes.
Gotcha. Thank you. So, two important things about the feature toggle, especially for, I would love to hear from companies or groups that have already adopted something like this. But two common things I would love to share is, when designing a feature toggle, it is always good to start from before you start coding on your new feature, right? So you can design how you want to toggle that easily. So another way to say it is, it's a well-defined and easy to understand toggle. It's not only kind of used and toggled by the person who wrote the toggle, or I should say, it's not only used by developers. In a lot of companies, any team member, especially the product team, are in charge of deciding which toggle to turn on or off for certain clients. That means it should be very easy to understand and very close to the business logic. And it's also, for long-term maintainability, is also healthier to maintain it that way. The other one is testability and clean up of toggles. You may not want to have hundreds or even thousands of toggles just sitting in your code base with a lot of if else's. It's going to be also harder to maintain in the long term. That's the two major ones. There are also other best practices shared by a lot of open source folks, pretty much from ThoughtWorks and Martin Fowler. But they describe a lot of advanced ways to use toggles, but I'm not going to cover that today. The basic ones, as I mentioned, is just if else, right? If this new cool feature is enabled, I go here, else I use the old code path, right? It's very good for simple cases. You may see a lot of usage like that already in our code base for either static config or session properties, right? But you may also notice that if there's no cleanup on that, or if it happens to step on each other for two toggles or two session properties in the same file, in the same code block, you may have a nested situation, which is pretty hard to toggle that and even to test that, because when we introduce a new toggle, we would love to test both on and off mode, so we can be more confident when we switch back. If something bad happened, right? We want to be able to fall back to the old implementation without being a code restart, or even worse, a patch, a hotfix on production. So to assist that, we also introduced this dependency injection based toggle. So imagine you have 20 places of if else, big monolith file. You don't want to do that in 20 places. You would rather introduce a new implementation for the same interface. So now you can probably tell I'm making an assumption that we already have an interface defined, right? Now all I need to do is add the new implementation for the same interface without breaking the interface, but I can toggle that at runtime without new deployment or code restart. This also gives you the kind of another benefit, right? You can decide at runtime for certain users for any other canary strategy you want to apply in your own company or group. it also make it easier to clean up the old toggle, because you just need to delete the old implementation when you finish the canary to your entire client base. It's much easier to delete those if else code paths, which is more error prone. Backend. So you may be wondering, what's going to be the source of truth for my configs. We have a default implementation which is file based, but it's not good for a really large kind of deployment model. So it's recommended to use a shared backend. It can be anything. We have an interface defined for that. You can extend that to either MongoDB, Redis, whatever you like, right? And for Meta, we also have something similar, which is called configurator. So that's the backend side. One thing I also want to mention is the limitation. Feature toggle is code level. It does not cover, say, I want to upgrade dependency on Maven side. I want to change the POM, I want to introduce new libraries or upgrade the version of the library. It cannot be handled by feature toggle. That will be covered by E2E test. So the open source infra, which have the benchmark running, will cover that to make sure at least you don't have a runtime or compilation error like that. Two common questions is that an overkill if I want to fix a bug? So that depends. It depends on whether you are under the pressure, for example, to apply a hotfix on production, and that may, under that circumstances, you introduce another bug and make things even worse. So yeah, it depends. Another one is when I have a huge PR, right? This may happen sometimes with maybe 200 files. I may also ask myself the same question, right? Is that a well-defined feature? Is that really risky? Can I break that into multiple smaller PRs to make to follow the continuous integration style? Introducing even unfinished PR with the toggle in dark mode. Dark mode here means even the code can be deployed to production, but it's a dark launch, not being used by anybody. And later I can do a dark launch with only one test user. So only I can, as a tester, I can see the changes, right? Only very limited scope. And then I decide to enable 10 pilot clients. So that all depends on the feature you are working on and the deployment model and the release model you want to do. All right. That's all for the feature toggle. Any questions? If not, I'm gonna give it back to Tim. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Any other topics that anyone wants to discuss? Right, we can leave 8 minutes early. Thanks, folks.
Thank you, Tim.
Bye-bye.